Sam, we love our poker here, but I believe in the heart of the fish cards.
Ooh, I believe in the heart of the cards too. Welcome everyone to our very next episode of the Two Fish at Table Poker Podcast. I am one of your hosts, East Coast Samuel.
I'm Legend Been One on Poker Stars, and we have a variety pack of topics to discuss today. The first of which being the final book in the sort of long to-do list of books I had over the last few months here. Here I got for Christmas The Theory of Poker by David Sklansky. A enjoyable book experience for me that fully kind of focuses along the grand principle of the theory the fundamental theme of poker. And after that, we'll discuss a few other things along the way here. But I ask you, Sam, having also read the same few poker books the last few weeks, months with me, what was your original takeaway from this book experience?
Yeah, so David Sklansky wrote this book. He's a three-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner. I just have his Wikipedia up right now. Mainly in the 1980s, he's won nearly $1.5 million in live tournament earnings. So he's not like a huge presence in the game anymore, but he was back in the 80s. Um, and this book does kind of feel like a book that was written pre-Moneymaker era, pre-online. There's no discussion of solvers, there's no discussion of mathematical theorems. But this is a game that really does go through the theory of poker, as the title suggests. Really breaks down a lot of different things: bluffing, semi-bluffing, action after cards have been dealt, action while cards are still dealt. And I thought that it was a good read. I mean, not 100% perfect. We'll go through it all in detail. But yeah, like of all the poker books we read, I think this is the most helpful one.
I agree. I felt that I learned a little bit here and there, and I also had sort of things that had been in my head before kind of reaffirmed. Like it's kind of refreshing to have something that you've thought in your head be on printed page so that you kind of be like, yeah, I do get this. I am doing something right here, and I can maybe add a few details that this book is adding to the equation into my game here. And this book is mostly focused on limit poker. And but it also kind of broadly covers a little bit of a lot of the games without focusing too heavily on just one game in particular, but also mostly from the cash game perspective. I mean, you can still, I kind of view this book as if a tournament was requiring A, B, and C, this book gives you A and B, the basic fundamental principles that you need to follow, the logic and the ideas. Whereas, all these tools in your arsenal from this book need to be applied appropriately in a tournament setting, and this book doesn't really take time to go into that, which is not a problem. It's not trying to make you the best tournament player of all time. It's just trying to add to your sort of your brain's knowledge of poker here. So for that reason, I think the book really worked, and it's done in a very professional, formal way without being too textbook rigid in its structure. Unlike something like Super System, which had a chapter for every single game, variant of a game in sort of separated fashion, these chapters in this book really kind of merge all the games into the discussion of each particular technique or thought process in poker.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, they really do break down each and every single. I mean, the chapters are sorted in, raising, check raising, slow playing, things like that. But I mean, I'm just looking at the table of contents here and seeing the different subsections. I mean, within the chapter on raising, there's raising to get more money in the pot, getting more money in the pot by not raising, raising to drive out opponents, raising as a means of cutting down opponents' odds, raising to bluff or semi-bluff, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, it's very precise in terms of its considering position, it's considering different spots that you can take. Um, Again, some, antiquated parts here and there, but I mean, these are still principles that I think apply all the way to today. And then you just add solvers on top of that, and it works really well. Something that you brought up is that this book is not necessarily focused on Hold'em. It talks a lot about draw games. In some chapters, it focuses a lot more on draw games than it does on Texas Hold'em. There's also discussion of Raz. And as you mentioned, yeah, I mean, one of the shortcomings is that it doesn't talk about tournaments, which again, in the 80s, I mean, there weren't as many tournaments as there were today. So it's, it's understandable. But I mean, the book does state that it was updated, that this is the fifth edition, and the first printing was in April 2023. So you'd think that he'd maybe want to write a new chapter about tournaments or update some of the language here and there to do that. I think that was a missed opportunity with this edition. But again, not like a huge deal, but just something that could be, if he's still considering new editions of this book, he could do that in a future edition.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning what the actual fundamental theme of poker is, and it's mentioned early in the book, and then it's kind of alluded to back and forth throughout the later chapters. And really, it kind of comes down to making your opponent play in a suboptimal manner, making them deviate from how they would play if they knew exactly what your cards were. And conversely, you playing your hands to assume the maximum possible winnings if you were aware of what your opponent's cards were. And it's not harped on too, you know, strongly. It just pops up here and there organically during the various chapters. And so unlike say the kill Phil maneuver, I bought into the core principle of this book because it just made sense to me.
Yeah, he calls it the fundamental theorem of poker. And the exact fundamental theorem, word for word, is every time you play a hand differently from the way you would have played it if you could see all your opponent's cards, they gain. And every time you play your hand the same way you would have played it if you could see all their cards, they lose. Conversely, every time opponents play their hands differently from the way that they would have, they could see all your cards, you gain. And every time they play their hands the same way they would have played it if they could see your cards, you lose. So the theorem, in other words, is not about winning and losing pots. It's about what the actual mechanics within each hand are. So again, I think that the theorem really applies again to a lot of situations, like where you have the second best hand. You shouldn't necessarily raise there. You should consider what your opponent has. You should think about what they think you think they have. All this sort of next level thinking. I like that the theorem is focused on that. And as you mentioned, in comparison to Kill Phil, which is raise all in, put all this pressure on your opponents. You have no post flop play. Maybe as you get more chips, you adjust your hands a little bit. I mean, this theorem makes a lot more sense and it applies to so many more situations. And it is repeated a couple times throughout the book, but each time it's repeated, it's within context and it makes sense within, as I mentioned, the chapters that are on raising and check raising, etc.
And Super System had chapters upon pages upon images of like charts of the numbers of if you have an 8 low in Raz, your chances of winning against a nine, someone drawing with a made 10, drawing to a seven or something. There's a couple sections actually about exposed cards and sort of what are the odds of you making a certain hand with a certain starting cards. And I really like that because again, Raz has always been kind of one of my favorite games to play on PokerStars and the Mind Sport Olympiad and 8 game mix. So it was fun to have something directly correlate to that part of my game. And I also liked the section on reverse implied odds because you think about implied odds a little bit, but I probably don't. So then to add one more level to that cake was kind of cool to watch. And again, so there are just some sections in this book that were genuinely brand new to me, but didn't feel like that I could buy into, that made sense, and that were explained in good detail.
Yeah, I mean, the book seems to be written for people who know a thing or two about poker. I think professional poker players could get something out of this too. But I was kind of wondering, if you're in the shoes of somebody who, maybe you play poker with your friends, and maybe you've gone to a casino and you've played, one, two, two, four cash games, low stakes stuff, and you pick up this book. I have to wonder if you're seeing all these different concepts and all these different situations, if you're going to feel overwhelmed by this book. So that's a bit of a shortcoming that maybe, if you're just like, you're on the threshold of deciding whether or not you want to pursue poker, even as like a strong hobby, let alone as a career path. Maybe you read this book and you say to yourself, oh, gee, maybe I shouldn't pursue this, which is probably a good thing because if you're, anxious about your poker skills and you're uncertain about when to check raise, when to semi bluff, when to shut down your semi bluffs, if you're anxious about those concepts and you don't have a good grasp of them, then maybe you shouldn't pursue poker professionally. But it's maybe again a bit of a shortcoming that perhaps in some places the concepts are maybe just a little too technical for a base level player.
But at the same time, limit poker is so very different than no limit or pot limit poker that I feel like the average amateur is playing those no limit hold'em games where they can just go all on the faces on free flop and every now and then they'll be called by kings or queens and make a big money that way. Whereas again with limit games, it's really a more patient game. Guys like Mike Matusow, Jared Blesnick, they play these games and are very good because they know the specific detail of every situation, like when to chase that nut high or nut low is worth it or whatnot. And so again, I think that this book is definitely not meant for person playing poker for the first time. A couple of other books did kind of allude to that was sort of their goal was to help someone who was totally new to poker. This is, I would even say, not even like I'd say like if you have total amateur, one level above that, I'd say at least from that third tier and above is really the prime audience for this book. And again, I think that we both fall into that category quite nicely. So that's why I think I enjoyed this read as much as I did. There was also a great example of game theory explained as a chapter on using lowball poker, and I really liked the example regarding bluffing that was used, where this book every now and then will mix in like a anecdotal story of a situation that David Sklansky was involved in, and I thought those moments were used just the right amount, not too often, but also not just like once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of hands that are also just hypotheticals, and he'll show, you have queen 10 suited and, it's a queen high flop. What exactly should you do in that spot? Because, you have top pair, but you have a weak kicker. What exactly should you do there? And again, I like that nuance that, we've seen plenty of poker movies and television shows where it's, straight flush versus four of a kind. Here the examples are a lot more practical. What do you do with top pair weak kicker? What do you do with second pair top kicker? You have to negotiate these spots and figure out, okay, maybe I'm ahead 40% of the time. And, sometimes a guy, with second pair is going to call me, but sometimes they're just calling with, four to a draw, something like that. And again, all of these spots that are so realistic and you're going to counter dozens of times, a lot more often than four of a kind versus a straight flush, which really makes this book more practical for the user.
Yeah, and there was also some talk about how, check raising was not allowed or is not allowed contemporarily speaking with the book's chronology. And there's also rules about just there's a couple chapters that like talk about just, the kind of game you're in versus, talking about, poker stuff. So again, it's a little bit of other variety in there. It's not just purely poker strategy, even though that's the main focus of the book. And there's also, of course, a little glossary in the back that has some definitions in case you're, new to poker and you don't quite know what one of the terminologies. And it's a front and center thing for a lot of poker books that we've touched upon. They'll have a little section like that. And uh, so yeah, again, all around, I would say it's definitely my favorite poker education book that we've talked about. I read this probably in like groups, maybe like 30 pages, 30-page reading sessions, a little bit at a time. That way I wasn't just overwhelming my brain with all the nuances of the game that I was learning. So again, I think that it's probably you could probably find this on Amazon, for under $10 pretty easily. And I think anybody could appreciate this book out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, this book was a new printing that came out last year. So, I mean, this book is still being printed. You can find a copy of it, on Amazon or maybe even at your local bookstore. Yeah, I mean, this is a book I'd be comfortable recommending. What I also like is that there was no section on tells. There was no section on, how to run a home game at home, none of that cutesy stuff. The psychology of the game, as I mentioned, is more about thinking about what your opponent thinks you think they think. That's just kind of next level thinking of, and also, thinking of also obviously reading your opponent and trying to understand what hands they're playing. But again, it's not, he covers his face, therefore he's bluffing, he breathed deeply, therefore he's got a strong hand, nothing like that, which I've seen in other books. So yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this is definitely a book that's, a couple pegs off the base level player. If you're a base level player, I would suggest, familiarizing yourself with, maybe another book. I'm not quite sure what, that book would be for you, given that we've reviewed books for base level players and they're not quite ideal. But once you get a little bit more experience and you're have a bit of a handle on semi bluffing and implied odds and effective odds, then take this book and you can definitely move to the next level.
And again, as someone who does enjoy the occasional limit game like Stud or Res for the MSO, I do feel like some of the books, principles I might use very soon in the Mind Sport Olympiad, which kind of leads into our next topic here. The 2025 MSO has begun. Or I guess 2 weeks ago was the first event, the No Limit Hold'em event, just a typical nine-handed 15-minute blind level structure. A bit bigger of a field this time, 42, which I think while there were Hold'em events that were bigger than 42, those were usually later in the schedule. So as far as like the first event being a Hold'em event, this is a little bit smaller than maybe an event might have been, a year or two ago. 42 players in total. Luckily, this is the only event in the whole roster that's actually 10 a.m. EST for us, so that I was able to play without having to worry too much about missing work or getting in the way of my life schedule. So with this tournament, I know I had, again, I always feel like I am my number one goal in these tournaments is to avoid mistakes and to just not make that one Mike Matusow level blow up. And I do feel like despite the end results of this tournament, I did accomplish that goal. maybe like one or two hiccups along the way. So I had fun with it, unlike some other first events of the year that we've had in the past, like last year, for example. But I rambled on enough here. So how was what was your expectations and your thoughts on this first event?
My expectations, I mean, are always to just try to do the best I can. 42 person field, that's not, 42,000 people or anything like that, but it's a fairly big field, and I think the competition's fairly good. So it's just, try to avoid making mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I think I played this tournament really badly. Just misplaying top pair with no real kicker, misplaying ace queen before the flop. I got ace 10 a bunch of times. I think I misplayed it a couple of times. I was never above the starting stack of 10K. I lost the very first hand. It was pretty much all downhill from there. Really got nothing going. Only won a couple small pots here and there. Didn't really lose any huge pots until toward the end. When I lost a pot with, I think it was ace queen. I think I had ace. Yeah, I think I had top pair, and then I bet on the river, and the guy raised me, and I folded, and so just silly stuff like that. I'm kind of rusty. I haven't played a lot of poker over the last year, so yeah, I don't know. I got 18th, so 18 out of 20 out of 42, top half of the field, which is always my first goal is to make the top half of the field. So not an absolutely terrible start, but not a really good one either.
Well, this event kind of reminded me a little bit of the Omaha event last year, where one of our tables, comparatively on different tables to begin the full tournament, was playing significantly fewer hands than the other. And so I was occasionally asking, so most of how many hands have your table begun? I've done this many hands, and so it felt like the ratio was about like 4-3,
Hmm.
maybe even a bit more skewed to my table being faster. Like I think at one point my table had played 74 hands in the first hour versus your 55. So I think that's about 4-3-ish or so. Had
Yeah.
seven. I got off to a pretty slow start in the first level or two, and then level two, I made a full house and won a pretty sizable pot, and I was pretty comfortably above the starting stack for the majority of my stay in this tournament. My after the first hour, I was at 10,006. So again, most of that came from that big full house hand in level two. Level three, I did pick up a nice bluff of second pair, a successful hero call, and then hour two was really kind of like my peak entertainment enjoyable factor for this tournament. I hit 15,500 at one point. I made a couple of really good plays, and one hand I'll just do two hand pretends here. I had ace jack suited. I think I was big blind. It went I think a raise, call, small blind calls. I just call them in raise. I don't think ace jack suited strong enough to three bet with that many players in the hand. Flop came undercards with two of my suits, so I have two overs and the nut flush draw. Uh,
Hmm.
Small blind bets, I think like half pot. I call, fold, fold. Heads up, it's an offsuit ace, so I have top pair, and I bet and he folds. But it was still his bet on the flop was big enough that it was a pretty sizable pot for that point in the tournament. So I was pretty happy about that, and I
Hmm.
was happy that I didn't um you know. I was happy that I just made the call there because my instinct said, yeah, maybe I could raise here, but I feel like, we're so deep stacked still in the early tournaments that I was happy with my pot control, and also that I had a fairly good read that he didn't have like a set or anything crazy, so I had all my outs that were live there. And then a little bit later I made this four bet with jacks that got the guy to fold with three bet, and I was just really happy that I made a good assess that maybe he had like ace queen or something like that and he didn't want to play a huge pot. And again, taking down a big pot pre-flop with jacks after a three bet, especially online, is not that common. So I was pretty happy with that turnout here. And then from that, once I hit that 15.5 thousand chip stack, I had busted out a player in 31st place. I had kings. He went all in a ace queen short stack. I had kings called, busted him. So that was pretty cool. And then really from that point on, I just kind of folded my way down.
Hmm.
I really didn't win any too many hands. I made one bad hero call. I had ace king high, and the guy bet the river, and he had river to straights, but he only had like he hit like a gutter ball straight. But I knew he had a 10 in his hand. Like I knew like he'd have like ace 10 or ace queen, ace jack or king 10 or queen 10. No, I beat all his hands. He had 10-7, which had straight. So I kind of felt like even though it was an incorrect hero call, it was kind of the correct hero call in a weird way.
Hmm.
But again, that was really my only true hero call the whole tournament. Other than that, really, the tournament field really was just pretty aggressive pre-flop. So I really wasn't seeing too many flops besides maybe from the blinds. I mean, they were pretty standardly raising 3x, which I was hoping they wouldn't do. Like, that's something I would be able to raise 3x, they'd be raising, 2x. So I couldn't really, bully the table or anything. So I was just kind of waiting to get hands. And I didn't get too many hands. I think I had aces once. I think I had ace king 3 times. But and then the jacks once. I didn't really have too many monster hands. And while I made a couple of big full houses here and there, it was mostly in the early levels. So I ended up finishing in 12th. I had 6.5 big blinds. I went all in with ace nine suited. I think we're sort of six-handed, 2 spots over had aces, so I flip a nine, but I know I don't improve from there. And I would have beaten ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, but not ace obviously. So I got 12th. I had like again 6.5 big blinds, which would have been like 4,000 chips at that point. I got into the
Mm.
700 big blind level, and so I had fun. I didn't really make any mistakes. It was my first time all in at risk the whole tournament, unfortunately. I got a few shoves when I was short stacked through earlier, but um, there was a couple times where I had made some big pre-flop folds. Like I folded tens pre-flop correctly. The guy had ace king and queen queen at one point. So that I was making the right reads pre-flop, and so I had fun. I just 12th is not bad out of 42. It's the final two tables. I was in last place when I busted. It wasn't like I was middle of the pack and I busted or anything. So I
Mhm.
didn't make any big mistakes. It's just a problem when you see players around the tournament like going crazy with like king queen. It's one guy who got eighth place, El Capia. He went all of queen six and against six six and hit a queen. Like these crazy all-ins that make no sense are always against players that are not me, and I never, can trap these guys when they make a bad play. And so it's a little frustrating, but at least I'm happy I didn't make any mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you played fairly good. You played better than I did, of course. Yeah, I mean, at my table, as you mentioned, 55 to 74 in terms of the hands. I mean, there were a lot of 3 and 4 way pots and a lot of 3 and 4 way pots that went to the turn or the river. So that's why it was, so slow. And as I mentioned, I got like ace 10 like 6 times over the course of the tournament, just over and over again. And I think the best hand I made was that hand with the ace queen where I folded on the river, like top pair. That was the best hand I got. No two pair, let alone a full house.
Well, I mean, there was one hand where you folded queens on a flop that had like undercards, and this was against a player that was playing really crazy the whole tournament. But this was the first time he made that like crazy move, and so
Yeah.
had it happened later in the tournament, I think he probably made the call and he probably bluffing, and you probably capitalizing on that situation. But it's just unlucky for you that the timing of that play by that player was at that point in the tournament.
Yeah, it was a jack high flop. I think it was like jack 10-5 or something on the flop. So like you could have jacks or tens there. I mean, I don't know. Or could have ace jack or something. Yeah, I mean, again, like one pair situations here. It wasn't, two pair or anything. So yeah, I mean, we'll just see. I mean, obviously that's just one tournament. There's several more to go. So, I'm not discouraged or anything. I had fun. So we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, I lasted about a little over 3 hours in this tournament. I think you were about
Mhm.
maybe like 2:45. I think just before the third hour break or something like that.
Something like
Again,
that. Yeah.
18th and 12th. Again, 12th is not bad. It's not like it's not nearly as horrible as our start last year was. And this MSO only has 7 events. And
Mhm.
again, you're using your best 5 scores from the event. So really, if this ends up being one of my top 5 scores, it's I expect it to be honestly, but if it ends up not being one of them, and that means it's I do 5 times better than that. That's fine too. But again, it just comes down to I really hope that the 11 players that finished ahead of me don't finish ahead of me each time. I want them to be eliminated first in some of the other events. That's not always a given, of course, but we'll see. And then with the next MSO event is actually tomorrow of this podcast recording. It's the Raz event, which has been my best event the last couple of years. I've made the final table the last 2 years. I think I had a fourth and a seventh, and
Mhm.
then you had like a fifth and maybe like a 13th or something like that last year or something like that. So again, it's been one of our better events. I feel like it's going to be probably a smaller event than this event was. It was kind of the MSO was a little bit late in making the tournament on PokerStars, so there's only I think single digit number of players in it right now. So maybe it'll hit 25 players, maybe less than that. That'd be pretty cool. And I might have work that I'll miss it, but hopefully I will find a way to play in it. We'll see.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
again, it's kind of funny how my 2 best events are the very first two in the roster. So hopefully I can get a good enough good of a good start tomorrow to have a miss or two in the later events and not be totally out of the running.
Mhm.
Moving on to a couple other topics here. We had a request on 2+2 from a user named Dogface for the main topic of this episode. That being the topic of poker trading cards, which I thought is a interesting thing because really I kind of just cluster that under the category of like just like sports cards. So whether it's baseball, football card. I mean, baseball cards are kind of like the big. I feel like that's like the historically the biggest sports trading card subvariant. But I was really surprised at poker trading cards, and even just the using the word trading in the I'm just like poker cards, not to be confused with like playing cards for poker, but trading cards really was something that I was surprised there was even as much hubbub as there is about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a company called what's it, Razor or something? Oh no, Leaf Trading Cards that's releasing a brand new set of trading cards at least this month or last month rather. And the set includes Daniel Negreanu, Phil Hellmuth, Jared Blesnick, Patrick Antonius, as well as Nikki Limo and Espen Jorstad and all these other people. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware that this company existed. That they apparently this is their first set of trading cards they've released since 2012. So there's a bit of a lull, but there was also like other trading cards that were made in like the 2010s. Like just recently, a Doyle Brunson autographed card sold for $1,600 at an auction on eBay, sort of like a one of one special one-time card. So it makes sense why that would be so pricey. But still, like, I'm surprised that there's actually a whole subculture with poker trading cards. I know, baseball cards are huge, right? And to a lesser extent, other sports like football and soccer and all that. I know that, but poker trading cards, just kind of strange niche. I also remember back in the early to mid 2000s, when a big blockbuster movie came out, they'd have like a set of like trading cards. Do you remember this, Ben? Like Spider-Man had trading cards and like Daredevil had trading cards. They'd
Yeah.
have like moments from the film on them, like Spider-Man's kiss with Mary Jane in the rain and Spider-Man fighting Green Goblin. And I always thought that was really weird. Like, who would want
Yeah.
to buy this? So, it's interesting that these exist to me.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up in the era of the trading card games. So that was the Pokemons, the Yu-Gi-Ohs, the Magic the Gatherings, the Dragon Ball Z. All every anime franchise had a trading card game. Some still do today. You have Lorcana is a new one for Disney. There's a lot of trading card games out there, and I felt that having a use for them, like a game with them, and then the added thing of collecting them and trading them, that you need all those elements for a trade for cards to be sort of like worthwhile for me. With these poor cards, they just kind of feel like glorified autographs almost, because a lot of these have autographs on them, but then and you can get autographs from people from meeting them, from book signings or whatever. Helmuth had those sunglasses had his autograph in them. So I don't know. I just didn't quite feel like this is really needed. Besides, I mean, it's obviously a cash grab for the production company, but I don't know. I don't feel like at any point in time I would have been intrigued by having any of these cards ever.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, one of the fun of trading cards is trading, is, getting with somebody else and, okay, I've got the Jared Blesnick card, you've got the Nikki Limo card, I'll trade with you. And that was the fun of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon back in the day, at summer camp, bringing your deck to the summer camp and you trade with people there. And then you'd, compete in the game against each other, right? You've got your Pokemon cards, you've got yours, and then you would compete with each other, right? Like there's no real trading element, there's no real game element, of course. I mean, it says here that each box is going to contain 6 autographs and that one card in each box has a multi-signed card. So yeah, I mean, it really just feels like a way of collecting signatures and, maybe like die-hard trading card aficionados who like the people who want to have the most complete set of trading cards on the planet of all walks of life, maybe they'll get used to this. But yeah, I mean, you think of these like top tier rare baseball cards and they sell for like 6 figures. You can make so much money selling baseball cards, and the most expensive card here is $1,600. So, what exactly is the novelty here? Who exactly is this for? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and also, with sports cards, you have, I remember having like the ones that had like the statistics on the back, like home runs, batting percentage. Like with poker, you wouldn't have that. Oh, their ROI on in 2020 in cash games, or like, oh, their number of bracelets by year and how many cashes they have. It's like you wouldn't even have that. I mean, I thought there's just not really any room for this to exist in the trading card space because it's just not. I mean, poker is I won't call it a niche game, but it's kind of a niche game without being a niche game. And so to have a
Yeah.
niche card game within a niche trading, it just I think it's going after too small of a community to really to resonate with the grand masses. And not to mention, I mean, with trading cards, like I used to just as a kid, I just loved to have like the most holographic, shiny picture,
Mhm.
like sparkly colored cards like ever. Like that's just fun to have the photos. With these cards, I think they all kind of have that design. Like it's with the whole point of trading cards, you get a pack. You have like 10 cards. You have like one really rare card and one like kind of rare card, and the other 8 cards are kind of irrelevant. You want those. You want the one rare in the pack. With this, it's more like just in boxes. Oh, you know what you're getting before. Part of the fun of a trading card game is not knowing what's in the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just sort of Googled baseball trading cards right now, and I'm seeing cards that are worth like $200 a piece, each of these cards, as well as obviously cards that are less expensive. But yeah, like there's a whole subculture with baseball trading cards versus, I typed in poker trading cards on Google, and poker cards, like a deck of playing cards is what came up first, right? Not actual trading cards with players on them. And yeah, like some of these cards, look really cool, right? I mean, you can get the traditional bicycle deck, you can get cards made of gold or whatever, I can understand like a collection of poker playing cards and you can get all these different cards with things on them, right? But like poker trading cards with like poker players on them, like they're baseball players, yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me.
I almost kind of feel like the only reason why you would buy them is to make money off them. Like you buy them for $100 and then like you wait 2 years and sell for $200. Like it's just it's a money grab. There's not really any love for the cards themselves or the poker behind it or the people on the cards because these guys are just not anything as special. Let's say that 1998 base set one Charizard that's worth $10,000. With a PSA 10. Like that just doesn't compare to me at all. I
Yeah, I
know.
mean,
That isn't this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, if you like this stuff, that's totally cool. Like, I want to just leave that as a disclaimer. Like, if you do like that, that's, fine. I don't want to yuck your yum, so to speak. But yeah, like, I'm not interested in buying these. I'm not interested in seeing where the novelty of it's kind of interesting. I mean, I'd be curious to see, would these cards sell? Do people still talk about this in a couple years? We might be the first podcasters to talk about this. I don't really know, but yeah, it's just very weird to me.
And because you would think that someone like us would be the sort of the ideal customer for these cards because again I grew up on these trading cards. I still have my attic, my binders of old Pokemon cards and whatnot, and we love poker. So you'd think this would be a natural thing, but it just doesn't make sense to me in the end.
And Ben, guess how much a box of the new cards costs? Do you know?
$200.
$90.
All right, I was only off by 100.
Yeah, but still, like $90 feels a lot to me for six trading cards. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, I feel like, a box like a box of like 10 packs of cards should be, $90 and then you go from there. Yeah, and I'm still, thank you again, Dogface, for the episode idea. This is kind of it. We're not gonna, call back to this unless, if anyone wants to send us any poker cards, we will review them, be like, huh, this is very interesting. I could, or maybe if someone had like a poker card draft where like whatever players you get in this box or pack, you bet on them to win the main event or get as far in the main event. Some like bizarre like fantasy poker draft thing of cards. That could be maybe something kind of amusing, but otherwise, I mean, even if I own these, I'd just sit on the shelf and just stay there probably.
Yeah, again, thank you to Dogface for suggesting this. This was, it's kind of an interesting thing to consider. But yeah, this wouldn't be again something I would consider buying. And yeah, if I owned a pack, I would try to take care of the cards. I wouldn't let like the rain hurt them or anything. But yeah, like you just put them up on a shelf. Someone goes, "Oh, what are those?" And you go, "Oh yeah, those are that's Nikki Limo. She was on the big game." They don't know what that is. So.
Yes. Speaking of the big game, we're still anticipating the next season of episodes with Rob Gronkowski. I think Phil Hellmuth in there. That'd be pretty
Mhm.
exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And I did want to say, we reviewed the first two batches before, and so I
Mhm.
ask you, besides cutting down on the filler and just having more either more substantial and higher quality interviews or just having fewer of them, what would be something that you would hope to see improve for season 3 of this show?
Well, yeah, the fillers are the big thing because I like the way the set looks.
Hmm.
Everybody seems to be having a good time. I kind of like that they're simultaneously rooting for the the loose cannon, but also not really rooting for the loose cannon. Just fun stuff, just banter between the players. I mean, Rob Gronkowski, has a great vibe, and he's done stuff like this in the past. So I don't know if he'll be a very good poker player, but it'll be just kind of fun to watch him. It'd be just funny to see him and Phil Hellmuth together, just for the novelty of seeing Rob Gronkowski sitting next to Phil Hellmuth. You know, I mean, we can think of people like Tony G that'd be fun to bring back. I don't really know what he's up to, but maybe he'd be interested in coming back. Yeah, I mean, just fun, upbeat, light poker entertainment's all I'm really looking for.
Yeah. Other recent poker happenings. So Mike Matusow in a Mouthpiece episode did name drop our podcast when I put in the comment section during the live chat that we reviewed his podcast. And he said, "Thank you. I did capture that moment on video and put it on our channel, so you can rewatch that." And that was again very cool. And again, it's just funny how much we sort of poke our way into the poker world without being really in the poker world. So I just love this development and. Again, Masso, again, thank you for the name drop. It's always great to interact with you. You're a great guy, and I really liked your documentary. Talking about it, reviewing it was always fun. And if you make a sequel, we'll be happy to review that as well. Something else that happened to me, I don't know if you heard about it, but Chase the Dream, that one season little poker documentary series from a while back, has a season two that has taken the form of just a bunch of like just people talking like kind of like Negreanu's podcast. Well, the first podcast, not the current one.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, not involving anybody from season one. And because there's not really much of a purpose to each talk, it's just like, oh, how was your weekend playing poker this week? It just, I don't know, it just kind of didn't really gel with me considering how I thought the first season had so much promise. So, what do you think?
I didn't watch it, so I don't know what the podcast is like. I kind of just saw that there was a podcast. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a shame that they're not going to do a season two following up on those guys because those guys were pretty cool. I like their stories. They seemed like fun guys. To at least just interview them would be nice, but yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, and again, I kind of feel like it got away from the best part of season one, which was just seeing things happen as they're happening, like filming and not the worst part of season one was him just discussing all these hands without showing us footage from those hands or anything. And now by this just having like a panel of like 4 or 5 people discussing, oh, I played a cash game today, I won $10 and I made a bad fold on 4th Street playing stud. Like it's just I don't know. I feel like you want to highlight the things that make your channel different, and this is sort of going back towards the norm of poker talk.
Yeah.
Other things going on here. Last night was round one of High Stakes Duel 6 between Blesnik and Matt Berkey, and this was a cash game format that alternated between Hold'em and PLO. And I kind of felt like making it a cash game format just kind of totally ruined the whole point of high stakes duel. And I mean, they're not playing like super, super high stakes. I mean, I think the blinds were like 100, 200 or
Hmm.
something like that. And after playing for 6 hours, the net result was Blaznik won $22,700, which, is a good number of big blinds and all, but it's just not very, um, you know, big money considering that this is, two, big names, and you'd think that maybe there'd be more blood or there'd be a format that would be more conducive to there being more sort of tension.
That is strange that they would do a cash game format just between the two of them. That's really weird. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, so I don't know what the quality of the play was like. But yeah, I mean, High Stakes Duel really peaked with Helmuth
Mhm.
Esfandiari and kind of, once those two kind of got away from the program, it's not, nothing against Matt Berkey or Jared Blessett. They're both great players, and I've seen them at the WSOP, and they're kind of fun to watch. But that's just kind of strange to me.
Yeah, and especially since I mean, it's because Blaznik had the PLO edge, whereas Berkey sort of had the Northern Hold'em edge. So I guess you kind of had the balancing of the skill edge
Mhm.
there, but I don't know. It's just like the first of 3 rounds. So I guess if they double the blinds for each round, maybe there could be more blood. But even then, they spent most of the time just like trading back the same money. And again, it kind of looks one of my problems with cash game poker in general is that this is the poker's elite exchanging like $100,000 with each other over and over again just not very fun. I think that even if they were playing for even just like $50,000 for a typical high stakes duel structure, a freeze out, sit and go, whatever, that at least you're still like, it could end right here. Like if I'm all in a cash game, and I'm watching a high stakes duel, it's like, well, they're not going to stop playing. They're just going to rebuy and they'll just, probably get some of the money back anyway. So I don't know. It didn't quite work for me, and they somehow continue to find ways to make high stakes duel less interesting for me. Like it's pretty funny
Yeah.
how if each iteration they've like taken away one layer of the cake that I enjoyed, and now it's a total different program at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you need to undo the cash game format. You need to get, players who, again, are going to butt heads with each other, grudge matches again, right? Like those WSOP grudge matches they had, in 2013. Get some of those people back, have
2011.
2011, excuse me, get some grudge match stuff going again, not that, yeah, I mean, Matt Berkey and Jared Blesnick, don't have any blood or animosity with each other, let's have, the winner gets to shoot the loser with a taser gun, something fun like
I
that.
mean, even the undercard to High Stakes Duel 4 that had Sean Deeb against Mike Matusow, I thought was more entertaining than this was, and that was for considerably less money than this event was, for example.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Again, it kind of speaks to how lackluster those PokerGo, you know, programming options are during the off season. I mean, the other thing going on right now has been the 2025 PGT Go Tour, and it's just they continue to not do anything interesting with these tournaments. I mean, it's just the same game over and over again. It's the same like 84 players over and over again. Oh, they lose event one. I'll just rebind to event two at the same time. It's the same structure basically. I mean, maybe the blinds are like 5 minute shorter level or something like that. It's just the exact same players over and over again. It's just boring to me.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled up the PokerGo Cup right now, and okay, PokerGo Cup, 5,100 no limit hold'em, event one. Okay, that sounds nice. Poker two, 10,100 no limit hold'em. All right, that's nice. Higher stakes. All right, let's see what event number three is. 10,100 no limit hold'em. Let's see what event number four is. 10,100 no limit hold'em. Event five, 10,100 no limit hold'em. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I can understand, okay, maybe you want to have a second event with a similar structure because somebody missed the first event, but these are all within 5 days of each other. What gives? Okay, and then 1,500, 1,000 no limit hold'em, and then 15,100 no limit hold'em again the very next day. What the heck? I mean, there is an 8 game mix event that's supposed to happen later on. Maybe that'll be kind of fun. There's horse, there's Maury's mix. I don't know what that is. 10 game championship. Okay, like, there's some mixed games that'll happen later on, but I mean, it's strange that that's the exact same event 5 days in a row. I've seen little clips of the PokerGo Cup. I saw Yokozawa winning, and it's his first, LA or Las Vegas win rather. That's nice. I like Yokozawa. I think he's fun. It's good to see, some like a new fresh face for the game, starting to get attention. But yeah, like, nothing really super exciting has stood out to me.
Yeah, and again, the structure of the PGT, it's like they'll have events in January. But that's like right after the December like end of year stuff. There's no time for it to like really sink in. Then they had like the PGT last chance, and then I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really build to like a conclusion where you have like some big buy-in final table or like the top nine qualifiers all play or something. It's like, and again, it's also the same sort of like top pro, second tier top pro players. There's no amateurs in there. There's no real. Maybe there's one or two business folks here and there. Not often though. I mean, if they're playing, doesn't mean they're at the final table or anything. So again, it's just these fields are lackluster. You don't get the top pros that from like 20 years ago, Hellmuth, Ivy, Negreanu in there too often. I mean, they'll be in there every now and then, but not usually for, every event of a series. And again, they tried to just make up this own thing. It kind of feels like it kind of feels like a sanitized, safer version of like the Epic Poker League that failed, 15 years ago that Andy Duke was part of. And,
Mhm.
it's I'm hopefully somebody's enjoying this because I certainly am not.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned how like there was the end of the year events, and then it's on into the PGT because I'm looking at the schedule here. The PGT ends on April 5th, and then the US Poker Open starts on April 7th. So it's pretty much the same events. It's 5,100 no limit hold'em, 10,100 no limit hold'em for 5 days in a row, then 1,500 100 no limit hold'em. It's the exact same thing. Also at the PokerGo studio. So it's the same tournament, basically, the same structure, the same events, just in the spring instead of the winter, and they're calling it the US Poker Open instead of the PGT. Like that just doesn't this doesn't make any sense to me. If you want to have like a big this is the official PokerGo tournament, cool, have that. Have a bunch of different events, have a bunch of different buy-in structures, try to add some more fun, add some unique event, have Chinese poker if you want, have no limit hold a mix with PLO, something like that.
Simon's
Don't
Bluff?
do yeah, something like that. I mean, just do something that's a bit different, a bit spicy, so that everybody can be like, "Oh yeah, the PokerGo Tour is coming up. Like this is going to be so cool." But don't just have one tournament with a bunch of different stuff and then have the same tournaments again. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I know that PokerGo kind of engulfed the Super High Roller Bowl and
Hmm.
the event that they spring off that, and I felt like that's okay. I enjoyed a couple of the iterations of that a while ago, not so much recently, but at least a while ago. So they had that going for them, and I kind of wish that PokerGo would just kind of grab in every poker TV show, whether it's the PCA or the Obviously the World Series is in there, but also the World Poker Tour. Like, just get everything into one streaming hub rather than only having, a fraction of the overall poker tournaments out there. That way, it's really the one-stop shop for all poker content. By not having that, it just feels like they're scrambling to come up with something at the last minute that will work, and it just kind of doesn't work for me at all at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how it's the one, trying to be the one-stop shop for poker content. It's also been recently uploading all of the, old World Series of Poker main events, not just the main events, but also a lot of the side tournaments. So, I mean, we paid money for all this. It was behind a paywall for a couple of years, and now all this stuff is just being posted for free on YouTube, which really just doesn't make any sense to me, like what exactly their strategy is for making content and making money. They haven't really been making any, bold, interesting original shows. I don't think they're interested in scripted dramas or anything like that.
Help too.
Yeah, Tilt 2, that'd be nice. But like, I don't really understand what PokerGo's strategy is in terms of branding poker, branding itself, and promoting the game. If you want to have things behind a paywall, have it be a little bit more different, a little bit more exclusive, and a little bit more exciting. I just don't see that.
Otherwise, just make a YouTube channel, put it all on YouTube, and just save your website development costs on that. That'd
Yeah.
be my advice to them. And again, I still didn't even really like the main event coverage last year as far as the technical aspects. So I do feel like this is kind of like maybe the dark era of Poker-go, and so we'll see if they can turn things around in the summer for the World Series of Poker coverage. But again, I still enjoy watching those events and all. But I'm on guard here. I want to see them up their game.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I know that recently you've been kind of dabbling in a few of those classic '04 through '08 episodes on YouTube, and so I do think it might warrant going back down memory lane and maybe reviewing some of those classic non-main event side tournaments, or just even call them side events is kind of unfair. It's just preliminary events almost. Maybe that could be a future podcast to get back to our nostalgic roots. Because again, I do enjoy watching those old contents.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. I mean, again, it's as I mentioned, it's pretty much all for free on YouTube now. There used to be all these compilations and, fan videos. I remember there was, a guy that went through each of the old school main events and had like, the 2014 main event in 15 minutes, and it was kind of funny. And then, the WSOP came along and deleted all those videos. It turns out he just needed to wait a few years because then this content would be for free, and now you can just do stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that, all this content used to be on YouTube and now it's no longer there, but at least it is open to the public for free. So, I mean, I'm definitely happy to watch it. If anybody has any suggestions for anything that we can review, feel free to drop it in the comments and we'll take a look.
And I do want to make one clarification. I did say last time that the Matusow documentary will be free on YouTube in July. Actually, that channel that I was referring to has changed it, so it'll be released on June 1st, actually. So
Oh,
only in about like 4 months or so, not even 4 months, will be a chance for everyone to watch Matusow's documentary for free. I still maybe have ads that mix in there, but still on YouTube for free. So that'll be pretty exciting. And again, I'll be able to relive the 2 to 3 seconds of me being on screen of Adam and Zach. That'd be pretty cool. And shout out to Adam, by the way, Adam Grossack. His team won the World Bridge Tour 2025 event recently. So congrats to him. Again, his card game skills are not to be joked around about. I mean, obviously he's only dabbled in poker a little bit recently, but his card acumen is amazing, and I wish him the best of luck in all his future events as he's a bridge champion.
yeah, absolutely. Congrats to Adam. He's one of the like top 10 bridge players in the world. He and Zach are both like in the top 10 bridge players in the world and like top 50 all time, like really, really huge. So congrats to both of them for their successes. They're awesome. So,
Yeah, and I think that's about it for our current topics list here. I'm all out of topic playing points here, Sam.
yep. Good
So,
talk.
yeah, good talk. And again, there's more. There's always more poker content to discuss. We'll be back to you guys more as we progress through the MSO. We'll also give you guys updates on that, and we'll see again how the last 6 events should for us, including tomorrow. But until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
As well as your poker in books.
Bye, guys.